Just gonna be just a second longer. And yeah, there we go. And popping out the chat so I can look at it, even though I don't look at it as often as I really should. Yeah, you know that. Okay. And bang. Hi, guys. Yeah. I'm thinking maybe I shouldn't have put a yellow towel on here with as bright lights as I've got up top side. It's making the cat and the towel glow in the dark. And it's really, really bright. As you can see, I have a very, very lovely kitten. 13-year-old kitten, but very lovely. Anyway, y'all aren't here to watch me talk about the cat. You're here to watch me sculpt. And if you're here watching on YouTube after the fact, don't forget the whole like and subscribe and bell icon nonsense. And any cubic photon is like a godsend for miniatures. I mean, just honest, just wow. But anyway, today we are going to be doing the next step in making this Tarrasque, and that's rigging it. Now, the method I'm using for rigging this is pretty much exclusive to Daz Studio. It's very similar to how it's done in most other programs in that you have a weight map, although you also occasionally have a Ralph. Stop it. Don't be tearing... No! Don't be tearing up my chair. You understand me, buddy? You understand me? Yeah. Get on down. Get on down. Fuzzbutt? Yes, you. I know what it is. He heard me talking about his sister and felt jealous, didn't you? Didn't you feel jealous, little buddy? Yes. I stopped, so he wants more. My cats are so feral, aren't they? They're just completely wild, out of control, and they don't like anybody, do they? No. No. Down you go, little buddy. Go on. Good boy. Yes. So, like I was trying to say, the rigging that I'm going to be using is what's called a tri-axis rigging, or they call it triax, but it's a 3-axis rigging. That means you have a different weight map for bend, side to side, and twist. This actually results in fewer bones, because in old style, let's say the forearm, you'd have a bone in the first half of the arm so that a single weight map would have a proper bend, but you'd have a second bone halfway up that would control the twist. And the same thing would apply for the upper arm. You'd have the bend side, up and down, and then the second bone for twist, so that it'd be a more even blend. Because when you bend the arm here, you only need to flex the vertexes that are up here. And of course, and the elbow. But when you twist, all of them from here to here are all of them, you can see the twisting, like right here, this particular line of the muscle, twisting. So, that's old school. The rigging I'm using uses a different weight map for each axis. And hello, Kim! I think you missed Ralph. And of course, happy little Shinju. Okay, I'm going over the basics on the rigging. Now what a weight map is it takes each of the vertexes and it gives it a list of which of the bones affects those vertexes and how much, and they all total up to 100%. So like a vertex here might be affected by the shoulder and the collar, but a vertex that's at the bottom of the muscles in the back might be affected by the shoulder, the collar, and the chest movement. So, varying percentages. Oh, Diamondicon. Oh, boy. Oh, boy. Shinju, what are you doing? What are you doing? Besides giving me a kitty kiss. Yes, yes. Okay, are you done? Yeah, you're done. Anyway. I spoil them, don't I? Anyway. So, this way, if you move a joint, it moves the vertexes along with that joint as much as it's assigned in the weight map. No. Ow! Go figure. Anyway, so it moves it by as much as its percent in the weight map. Now the thing is, vertexes down here are not on the weight map for the collar, but everything belonging to the shoulder moves when the collar moves. So you don't need to assign them. You only need to assign them to the joints that directly affect them. Now, to give you a better idea, to define the bones, what I did was, as you're about to see, I chopped up the geometry. You can see here that it's all different colors. Each different patch of color is a different bone grouping, so to speak. Now, in some of the old school methods of rigging, you see right in here, you can see that the thighs, which are like the salmon color, the collar, which is the red, and they're on the chest, which is blue, and the hip that is teal, but the abdomen touches all of them. In the old school, that abdomen would have to have at least one row of polygons, because you can only have it parented to one bone. But as it stands now, the new techniques, we don't have to worry about that. Okay? So I'm going to bring us into DAZ Studio. Now the tab I'm going to be using is the Figure Setup tab. If you're using DAZ Studio and you don't have this tab show up on either side, all you got to do is just on either this bar or this bar, right click, and it says Add Pane. And down there is look, there's Figure Setup. But I've got it on this side, so I don't need to worry. If there's any of these tabs that I use that don't come up automatically in your version of DAZ Studio, that's because you need to turn them on by this Add Pane thing, or Add Pane tab. Meanwhile, getting back to the basics. Under Geometry List, it currently has nothing. So I right-click and Add Geometry. And from here, I go into, it's Tarrasque, Sculpt. Now you can see I now have, for the actual geometry, I have 4 raw geos and 1 marked Tarrasque figure. The reason for that is when you first load it in, and I bring it over to where it says, I drag it over to Geometry None. The name of the figure is now Tarrasque figure plus the number of vertexes. And under label, I'm going to leave it as that, except I'm going to delete the number of vertexes. So the label is Tarrasque figure. Now each of these are the body parts. You use, in order to do this properly, there's a kind of a standardized form. And that's any body part that is on the right-hand side of the body, it's a lowercase r. Anyone on the left has a lowercase l. What? Lowercase l. And there's no spaces in the body part names, which means a lot of people will use, like me, what's called camel case. So for example, this R forearm, this right forearm here, the F and A for forearm are capitalized. Everything else is lowercase. Now, if we look at this, we see that, under hip, it simply says, it has the name inside the geometry, the label, which we're not going to change any of these because all the names are what we want, and then the order. Well, most of the orders I'm going to do at the end, but this is the joint rotation order. And it goes twist, bend, side to side. For example, the shoulder twists on the x-axis. It bends on the z-axis. Remember, this is not 3D printing, it's slightly different axis order. And it goes side to side on the y-axis, because that's y goes up like this, so that is an axis right here. No, that's not calling for you to sniff the y-axis. Okay, yeah, how about that? Meanwhile, but on the forearm, the bend is the y-axis instead of side to side. Side to side would be z, but we don't ever want it to bend on z because that's badness. The only time you bend on the z is when you break your elbow. Anyway, that helps us choose our rotation order. In this case, this is the hip. Yes? What? Do you mind? Ralph? I'm going to put you down. I'm going to put you on the floor. Okay. Hey. No. Alright, you're getting on the floor. We don't need squabbles. Go. And you, don't do that. Okay. Anyway, for the hip doesn't really need to be defined because it's what's called the root. Everything is parented to the hip. But we still want to get into good habits, so it would twist on the Z, bend, which go forward and back, on the X, and side to side on the Y. So that would be Z, X, Y. We look over here, and that's the next to last option. That's also what we'll be doing for most of the tail, the abdomen, the chest, the neck, the head, but not the limbs. Now, all of these are in kind of a random order, so what we need to do is we need to parent them. The jaw, right here, it would be parented to the head. And you can see now it's now a subset. The head goes to the neck. And the neck, well, it goes to the chest. Chest goes to the abdomen, and the abdomen goes to the hip. Now we have, oh, there's the right collar, but we don't need to do that yet. What we need to do instead is the tail. Tail to 10, 11 to 10, 10 to 9, 9 to 8, 8 to 7. Tail 1 is the tail part that's closest to the body. Tail 11 is the very tip. And like I said, you're working out from the hip. So from the hip, the next child is the abdomen. Then the next child is the chest. The chest actually has 3 children. One of them is the neck. The other is the collars. Now, what we're going to do before we do the rest of the collars is we need to set up No, no, no. You been bad, boy. No. Anyway, so we're going to set up the arms first. So put the forearms to the shoulder, this shoulder to this collar. Now, the hands. There's only one joint for each thumb because these are crude creatures. They don't have a lot of manual dexterity. They got pretty much this at most. So the thumb, our thumb goes straight to the R hand. Where is our hand? There it is up there. Our thumb to our hand. Our index 2 goes to our index 1. Our mid 2 goes to our mid 1. Our pinky 2 goes to our pinky 1. And then to the right hand we take the index, the mid, and the pinky. I'm then going to collapse it. This hand will go straight onto the forearm, and that's the right arm. The left arm still has its collar free because it was way further down. We're going to do the same thing here. Make sure that the pinky 2's on pinky 1, mid 2's on mid 1, index 2's on index 1. Then we're going to put the thumb, index, mid, and pinky on the left hand, and the left hand onto the forearm. And that's both arms. Now, we haven't done the joint orders yet. I do that after I've done all the parenting and such. I'm now going to collapse the size of the tail so that we have a bit more space to work. The right shoulder goes up to right collar. Left collar goes up to chest. So that right collar and left collar are right next to each other. And now we have the legs left to do. Each of the legs has 3 toes and 3 body parts, the thigh, the calf, and the pastern. So we have the pastern, a foot is not present because all 3 of the toes kind of intervene. So we're going to start with the out toe, mid toe, and in toe. Actually, that should be we need the in toe, mid toe, out toe in that order, because that's big toe, middle toe, pinky toe. So we start with the in toe, mid toe, out toe. We're then going to collapse both pasterns, just because. Then right pastern to right calf to right thigh to hip. And then left pastern to left calf to left thigh to hip. And then we're going to attach the tail to the hip. And now here's all our bones in a parenting order. Now we need to change all their bend axes. Hi, Citrain. Hi, Mark. Anyway, so as I said before, these are Z, X, Y. Almost every single bit of the tail and trunk. The arms and legs are different. And for those who missed it, this is the order for the 3 for twist, then bend, then side to side. Okay, now for the toes are also ZXY because they're pointing forward. But the pastern, calf, and thigh are YXZ because they twist on the vertical, bend on the X, and go side to side on the Z. So YXZ, YXZ, YXZ. Left thigh and tail are done. Now the toes, ZXY, 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 YXZ, YXZ, YXZ. Let's close that one. Now, the hands and fingers are pretty much YXZ, except the thumb. The thumb kind of points out. The thumb is ZYX. So let's go straight to the... Let's do this YXZ for almost all of this. Actually, no, the fingers are YZX. Because they bend on the Z, not the X. Okay, ZYX. Now the hand is YXZ. And so's that. But the shoulder and collar are YZX. The reason for this, again, it bends on the Z, side to side on the X, and twists on the Y. Now you'll note that those arms are almost, they're out there as an A. They're not directly on the axis. We'll get to that in a minute, because this is just the initial basic structure here. Now, as I said, you'll notice the fingers are YZX, so YZX. Oh no. Okay. I'll have to get to that in a minute. I accidentally removed the geometry reference. I was going a bit too fast. The thumb is ZYX. The hand is YZX. But the forearm, and so's the forearm. No, YXZ. It's YXZ for all of these daggum fingers. You gotta keep track and keep thinking, otherwise you'll do what I just did. And it's YZX on the shoulder and collar. Then the jaw is ZXY. The reason being is because you want your X to open and close. Z would be a twist, and Y would be side to side. We don't want that. The head is ZXY. Neck is ZXY, chest is ZXY, and abdomen is ZXY. Now, all of them have been parented and had their axis directions defined. So next we go down here to where it says create. Bing. And here we have our Tarrasque. Now, if you remember, I had one of these body parts that didn't have a selection group because I screwed it up. Expand all. And it was, if I remember correctly, the R-mid 2. So I'm going to joint editor tool, and to where it says tool settings. It says selection group none. Well, that's odd. We're going to make, that's the R-mid 2. There we go. Now, you'll notice all of these bones don't point in the direction that they're supposed to. Well, that's gonna be the longest part of this from my point of view, is sitting here and getting everything in the right place. So we're gonna start off in the left-hand view, and we're gonna start off with the jaw. Now what we do is we put the jaw at the pivot point, where it's going to bend from, which is right up about here. We kind of pull this down a little bit, and then we come up from the top view and make sure it's centered, and it is. Go back to left-hand view. Now how do we make this change its direction? We right click, go to edit, not edit, align node. We do not want to auto align all bones yet, because we have to move some of these bones. We then go to the head. Now the head, we need to move the tip of the head to the tip of the nose. We're going to put this just above center, because that's about where the spine would be. Align node. All of these trunk groups are all pretty much in the right place. Now, in a chain like neck to head, you want to kind of put the point at the back end of the next in line. So we put the red, which is the end point, at the back end of the neck, and we move this up to about there. No, it needs to be a little bit higher, up to about there. Then we right click, align node. The hip we don't mess with. Maybe to move the center of the hip closer to the center of the critter, and to bring the node a bit further forward, but for the most part we don't mess with it. Now I could start in on the tail, but the tail is actually the base of a new, the only thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to pull this back that way. We want to start at the end, at the tip. We're going to zoom in just a little so I can make this a bit more accurate, and we actually want the center here to be a little bit lower than the center of the tail, because that's where the spine is. And align node. Next one comes, alright, you see the shiny line down the center. We want to be at the bottom of that shiny line. I'm going to move this to there. Align node. Coming here, we also want to kind of move it to the front of the joint. Bring it down and point it here. Align node. Now we're still on 9. There's 11 total tail pieces, so yeah, that's a lot. This is the tedious part. Coming up soon will be the frustrating part, which is actually adjusting the weight maps. I'll admit, it's a lot easier in DAZ Studio than it is in some of the older software, where you had to manually define things. This has a brushing system, which unfortunately is not compatible with a tablet, but it's still useful. Okay, bring this down to here. Bring this over here. Align node. Now notice that you can actually manually enter places and rotations. That's not common, but it's useful for when weird things happen. You want to put this joint center pretty much where the center of the actual joint would be in a skeleton of this critter. For example, we're starting to go up a little bit now as we're veering away from the actual meat of the tail. Line node. And then the tail end of the tail, no pun intended. We're going to move it up even more, because the hip hangs down from the next few vertebrae. Now, at least the trunk line nodes are aligned. And if I go to top view, they're all centered. Next step is the fingers. To be exact, we're going to start on the left. And I'll show you something interesting. So we're going to start with the left pinky too. We're going to move it into the middle of that joint there and put this at the end. Oh wait, no, that's the pinky, not the left view. Yeah. I was putting it in for the Alright, so what we gotta do is we gotta move this back to where it's roughly in the center here, and then this forward. Let's look at the back view. Might get a better view. Yeah, so we need to move this down to about there. Now we align node, and then we hit edit mirror joints. Selected to opposite accept. Now if we look at the right pinky, hey look, it's got an exact mirror of what we just did to the left pinky. Now we're going to start with the base of the pinky. Once again, we move this to the center. We're going to move this back to here, because that's where the joint actually is. And with the left hand view, we can see that we need to move this over a little and this over a little. And then align node, edit mirror joints. And it just mirrored that pinky. Now, I make sure, yep, I'm on left mid, and we're going to bring it kind of down a little bit. Put it in there. I'm going to bring this forward. Align node. And edit mirror joints accept. Now we have, oh wait, I forgot to check. Yeah, that's what I thought. We got to move the joint center there. And probably about here. Align node. Mirror joints. Now the mid one. We're going to move the end to there, and we're going to move it forward just a bit, not a lot. And then go back to the left view so we can place this in the right spot, which is right in this knuckle. Align node, edit mirror joints. This is why I say this part is a bit tedious. In this way, however, it does help us actually get what we need for these joints. And honestly, the fingers are going to be the most annoying about this, especially the thumb. Bring this forward and this over, and then edit mirror joints accept. Oh, align node first, then mirror joints. I'm just clicking accept because it always defaults to selected to opposite. Now index 1. And we need to bring this over a little and bring this up to the joint right here. Align node and edit mirror joints. And now the next thing we got to do is this thumb. I'm going to move it to about there and then down to here. We're going to go to a front view, and that's about on par there. And so now we align node, edit mirror joints. You see, it's going pretty quickly. Now we take the hand. Put that about there, put this about here. Now we got a left view. I need to bring this over kind of towards the center. This back just a little. Align node, edit mirror joints. Now the forearm. We need to kind of pull the forearm back a bit because the back of the elbow is closer to the joint than the front. And as before, we put this on the base of the previous. Then we go to a front view, and we can see we need to bring both of these in quite a bit. We actually need to kind of pull this forward and down a little, about there. Align node, edit mirror joints. Next comes the shoulder, left shoulder. This will actually bend from in the middle of what would be the actual collar geometry. It's a bit wonky at times, but it works the best. I have yet to find anything similar. And we get a left view, and what we have is this pulls back. Now again, you'll notice the deltoid is more forward facing on this critter than it is on a humanoid, but it also tends to be where it's also closer to the joint inside. So now align node, edit mirror joints. Okay, and now we have the collar. And as with the human, the collar is the most difficult to place properly. So what we need to do is we're going to hide the head and jaw so we can see this easier. Now, we're going to drag the collar kind of down to here. And then we're going to align it, just so we can see how it looks. Okay, good. Now we got a left view, and you'll notice that the collar actually has to come forward a bit. Align node, edit mirror joints. We make the head and jaw visible again, just long enough so that we can go back to our perspective view. And now you can see that all of them except the legs are following along the body part they're supposed to be part of. So we obviously have to do the legs next. So we're going to go for a bottom view of both the outer and inner toes. Outer toe. We always start at the farthest end and work back towards the hips when we're doing these bone definitions, and when we're doing the weight maps later on. And then we're going to move that to there. And then we got a left view. Okay, let's bring it forward a little and down. Align node, edit mirror joints, and accept. Now we're going to start with the mid toe. Mid toe is mostly forward, so it's going to take more on the there. Now bottom, do we need to do much for this? Not really. Pull this over just a little. Align node, edit mirror joints. You can see this is literally saving us almost half of our time needed. Also, I need to go ahead and pull this forward just a bit. And mirror those joints. Okay. Align node and edit mirror joints. Now we're going to go front view and left view for these next couple, or back view and left view, because they're a bit easier to reach with these. So now we're going to move this to about the center of the back knee and move this over. We're going to now go to the left view, and we need to move this back to about there, and this forward to about there. Align node, edit mirror joints, accept. Do the calf next. Once again, we want to kind of pull it a bit farther forward than usual, because the presence of the knee. The leg actually bends closer to here. And then we place this at the base of the previous one. Go to back view. That's about right. And we bring this over. Align node. Edit mirror joints. Accept. And then one last one, and that's the thigh. Now the thigh is going to be a little tricky. You need to pull it up and almost bury it halfway in, because that's about where the joint is for the thigh. Now we go to a left view again and move this into place. And then we look, and maybe a back just a little. No, actually forward just a little. Align node, edit mirror joints. And now all of the joints are pointing the right direction. All of the bones. Well, we don't need to use that tool anymore. We're going instead to this tool. Looks like a paintbrush with weights on it, because that's the weight mapping tool. Now the first thing we do, we go to weight editing, fill by bone selection groups. What this does is, now when we go to the right shoulder for the X rotation, it's 100% filled, which means it has that blue shade. Now, we need to give it at least a basic a basic blending between, say, the shoulder and the collar, which is right there. So what we do is we're going to go geometry selection, select all. Now, weight editing, smooth selected, we're only going to go 2, because the hands. We're going to do this on X, Y, Z. And what's called scaling weights. This means that if I scale something, how much does it affect? This is what I went through for those male and female figures that I distributed. Alright, that gives us our basic blend and a basic weight mapping. Geometry selection, clear selection, and we're going to go back to a normal arrow. So we can see that, for example, this pinky. Oh, we don't want that. I appear to have gotten all the side-to-sides and bends backwards. So there we have the finger bending, and for a finger, that's pretty much accurate. That's pretty good. We don't really need to do anything else to the weight maps there. We don't need to worry about side-to-side. We can do some side-to-side with the first joint of each finger, but that's about it. But when we go up here to the collar and we go try to do a Z, you see that it folds in right up top. If we go a positive, it folds in on the chest. That's not how it should behave. So we're going back to the weight map brush. Geometry selection, select all. We're then going to remove the fingers. Actually, before we do this, let's double check on the toes, because the toes kind of questionable right now. So we're going to go for, as you can see, it's not doing enough. So we're going to wait, geometry selection, deselect by face groups. We're going to deselect all of the fingers. This might take a few minutes because there's quite a few finger bits. So all those fingers, pivot it around. Right now the fingers are really the only things we need to worry about with respects to, we don't want to blend it any more than what it's currently got. So face groups, L pinky 2. Deselect by face groups, L pinky 1. Deselect by face groups, L mid 2. L mid 1. L index 2. And L index 1. So right now, all of the vertexes are selected except for the fingers, but it's also still selecting where they are attached to the hand, which means it'll still overly smooth out that part. We don't want that. So what we're going to do is we're going to geometry selection, and we notice that if we want to shrink the selection, that's a control minus sign. So control minus, whoops. So we're going to have to wait a few on, we're going to have to reselect the thumbs. Wait a minute. Alright, so geometry selection, select by face groups, our thumb, and L thumb. There we go. Now we're going to shrink it, control minus sign. And then we're going to deselect the thumbs. And we're going to shrink it 3 more times. Okay. Now, we're going to go back to that weight editing. Well, first of all, let's make sure we're in the tool settings tab. We're going to exportation, weight editing, smooth selected. I'm going to change this 2 to a 10. And it's going to take a few minutes, during which time I will grab some soda. Oh, what is it with you? Yes, baby girl. You want pettings before you go eat. That's what it is. Alright, it's still going. That's because there's 91,000 polygons in this. And 90,000 vertexes. That's a lot. Okay. There she goes. Now we're going to switch to Y-axis. Now you notice, you can see it's already smoothed out. The blue areas are partially... the yellow areas are very minimally affected. The blue areas are partially affected. And the purple, where it fades in and out, is variable amounts of being affected. And as you can see, the blue and purple grew a lot when we did that. I'm going to do it here. Bye, Kim. I'm sorry I missed you. Going bye-bye. Anyway, as I said, this is going to suddenly pop to the new tier. It normally takes a lot more than 2 hours to properly rig something, but I'm doing the basics here to show you what I do, and then I'm going to be tweaking it before the next show. And yes, next show is Thursday, and Thursday is going to be most likely making the ultra high res schlemiel for this guy. The full high res detailing. I'm pretty sure I know of a way to do this in a different program than Daz Studio. But I'm not certain it'll work. The only program I can think of besides this that will do what I'm thinking of is Blender. And that's only if you can place the sculpt in a stack. I'll talk about stacks next week. And I don't mean the record company. And now we can geometry selection, clear selection. Now if we go back down to our pinky, we see it still has that same amount that it had before. But when we go to the hand itself, it's got a little bit affecting all the way up into the forearm. Not a lot, but some. Just to show you, we're going to go to parameters, and we're going to bend it. And that's looking like a much more natural bend. We're going to twist it. Yep. It's looking pretty good. So we don't need to really worry about the hand. But what about the forearm? That does not look good. Now what we can do with this, there's two things we can do. And one is actually a bit more complex and more likely. We're going to go back to weight map editing. We're going to add in a new weight map. Put it under X. We're going to call this X bulge left. And just to make sure it's working. Right now, we have a small brush here. When I paint on it, okay, this one is not affecting. So we try right. Nope. Held on Alt and it erases. Okay. There we go. As you can see, what it has done is it has given us a bit of bulge there. Now I'm going to use this tool, which is to smooth, but I'm going to make it a lot more powerful and a lot larger. There. Now, when we bend it, the next thing we got to do is we got to deal with the fact that this is coming in like that. So now we're going to try a different one. Okay, now we're going to do the X bulge left. I'm going to put some right in here. Okay, that's not doing anything. What about negative? Nope, way too far. There we go. Now we're going to smooth it, just like we did the other one. And now, when I continue that bend. Okay, let's see what happens when we do it with an X, with a straight up X rotation. And blend it. Okay, what we need to do is we need to go ahead and add more there. And that's telling me what I need. Let's undo some of this. And we're going to paint on more down here. And then smooth it a bit. So now when we bend it more, we can see what needs to be done. So we're going to add a little bit more here. Add some here. And we're going to blend it a little bit. Just enough to make it not look quite so dramatic. There we go. So now the bend looks a lot better. Although we have this problem. So what happens if we remove some of this from here? Almost nothing. So we hit Control Z. Let's go ahead and see what happens if we add in a little bit here. Yep, there we go. It's flattening out a bit. But we also need part of it to grow. So we're going to add in some here. By grow, I mean get pointy. So now we're going to blend that in. Okay, we need to add in some more down here. Quite a bit more. Okay. Now we're going to blend it. And we're going to get more of an actual and there. We have a sharper elbow now when he bends his arm. That is the basics. The thing is, we now have to go through that for almost every other joint. And not just the joints, but also the twists. You know, every aspect of every joint. So now we're going to the Y rotation. We're actually going to remove most of this. The reason being is because we want to have the center point of the blend further up the forearm. Now, as we blend, it's going to come back up, but that's okay, because we've moved the center point of this blend further up the arm. And very often this will take a couple passes of this. In fact, let's go ahead and come back to the next pass, going even further up the arm. Twists are usually the ones you have to do this on. Bends inside the sides, you don't. Okay. Now we blend it so it twists a bit more, and it's a more natural twist. Now, well, I say natural twist when this is a level of twist the Tarrasque will probably never have. It will probably be twisting not just the forearm, but also the upper arm and the hand to get this far down. But by making it at least vaguely work at the most extreme versions of this particular joint, it'll work well for a more natural version. And it works in both directions. Now we're not going to do side to side because, well, the arm doesn't bend that way there. Let me poke back in here real quick. Okay, 4 people watching. Now we're doing the shoulder. Now we're going to start with the front to back. And what we need to do now is we need to kind of smooth out this section. And that's the X rotation, so we smooth this out. Actually, we need to pull this a bit more like this. We need to pull it a little bit higher. Because this is supposed to be happening inside the deltoid, not after it. I'll go ahead and pop that up a little bit more, increase the inner radius just to make it go a little bit faster. And then we take the smoothing tool and smooth everything out once again. Again, we're starting with an angle that I'll probably never put him in to begin with. But now the thing is, once I've done all of this, guess what I got to do? You guessed it! Do the opposite side. Now we're going to go ahead and remove a little bit from here and smooth it back over. And see, that looks like a much more natural blend. Or bend. Now we go forward. And again, we're getting a bit more of that natural. Now, we can add in some of those, like we did at the elbow, to kind of push it forward. But that's something I'll do later on in the week, before next week, because I've already shown how to handle that. So let's turn our bend back to 0. Now it's side to side. Again, we have the same problem. If we look at the map, it's way low. So we're going to put some up here, and especially up here. Going to make sure that we got it nice and heavy near the end of the joint, especially. Otherwise, okay, and then we smooth it. Make it look like that pectoral is condensing in. And make these all blend in so that the joint is actually moving the way we want it to move. Now there's one thing some of you may have noticed that I'm not going to care about on this bend, but on the X one I do, because the Z, we don't want the forearm to bend in Z. Let's go back to the forearm on the X. And it did not affect the bend of the X, despite the fact that we were painting on how much it was being affected by other joints. There is a symmetry function for the joints, but it doesn't really work well on the ones closest to the trunk. Now, so I'm going to go ahead and take the shoulder and forearm. We're going to weight editing, weight map symmetry. Mode. Selected bones. Across the x-axis, right to left. Now we see how this one looks. We're now going to select the left forearm. Looks almost identical. Does it bend the same way? Oh, not bend. Side to side. Yes, and it even included the bulging. So, we would do the same thing for the legs and for the collarbones. We'd go through each joint and make sure they work right. Now, one of the trickiest joints to work with is actually the jaw. Now we want to kind of lock the twist in that because it never really opened. I'm going to open up. It actually looks pretty good opening up. And it looks like this part of the jaw is staying like a jawbone. We close it. And we want to kind of get it to a point where it's actually, you know, not poking through. Let's see. That's about the most that his jaw will close, but it looks like I don't need to do anything to it. Oh. I'm setting a minimum pose to -10. And now the maximum will be about here. Let's say 46. There. This is actually the first time I've had a jaw behave as politely like this. And look at that bite. Wouldn't you hate to be on the receiving end of that? But if you look at the inner mouth, you'll see there is a problem with this. Because of the way it's cut, the inner mouth isn't blending well. So we're going to make sure it's at maximum. We go to Tool Settings. That's the X rotation. So we're going to smooth this. First, let's remove some of that. And then smooth it. There we go. Okay. That's a serious bite, isn't it? Especially with as big as he is. If I made an open mouth version, you could easily stick a figure inside its mouth. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and select the Tarrasque for right now. We're going to save what I currently have. File, Save As, Support Asset, Figure Prop Assets. And we're going to save this to our miniature-based geo file as Tarrasque. Under product name, we're going to save miniatures. And then we're going to set a content type. And this is simply going to actor, character. Accept. The content type is for this aspect of that studio which is content management. And if we go to our content library, go to miniature based geo, we'll see that right here, oh no, right there, it hasn't actor marked Tarrasque. Excuse me. Now, like I said, if I kept doing any more of this, it would bore you to tears. It's just me sitting here changing colors from red to blue and purple and back again, repeatedly, and bending joints and making sure they look good. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask now, is there anything y'all want to see? I mean, I can think of one thing y'all might want to see. I mean, you never know. Maybe. For all I know, you might not want to see 46 orc heads. Yep. Got the heads done. I've also been working on the torsos and discovered I might end up with more torsos than I thought. I'm currently at 24, and it's looking like there will be about 30. 30 torsos. Yeah. So, do any of y'all have any questions? Baby girl. Oh. You gotta hold your towel up. There you go. I know I had one question earlier today from someone who wanted me to start in on some of these free programs and just dive headfirst into them. Tell you what. Come the time I'm done with the Tarrasque, I'll do that. I'll make a rust monster in Blender, having never touched it before. It'll probably suck. Anyway. Is anyone besides Sit Train awake? Anyone watching and awake? Well, with the advantage of yeah, we're amazingly bad. I haven't even touched Blender since 2005, 2006, back when it was UI designed by committee. So yeah. Excuse me. I didn't get my nap today, so I'm an old man. I mean, you can tell by the gray hair and the beard. I got the badger stripes going right here, Yeah. Uh-huh. By the way, I dropped my tablet the other day. 2 bad things happened because of that. Number 1, my SD card popped out with all of my stuff on it. Normally goes right in there. Number 2, it damaged the power cord plug. So I ended up having to get a new tablet. No, not really a big deal, except for one small problem. The new tablet is narrower this way, just a little bit, and longer this way. It is literally 1 millimeter too long to fit in my game case book. So unless I can get a flat rasp that's roughly half a centimeter wide, I can't put this into my game case book. Now it's also, an Amazon Fire. But considering that my previous one was a Best Buy brand Insignia $60 tablet, it's a little bit faster. Just a little bit faster. Yeah. So, Mark, do you have any questions? Since you and Citrain are the only ones kind of talking since Kim had to head out. Yes, it is. I can't stand small tablets. If I'm not gonna be using it, if I'm gonna be using something small, that's what I got the phone for. A tablet needs to be large enough to feel like a book to me, to make it no problem to, say, pull up on the File Explorer and show off some of the pictures of my cats. You know? Yes, that's Ralph. When he was about 9 months old, he started somehow getting onto door frames. Well, this is the $150 one. It's the kind of the mid-high. It's many times faster than my $60 Best Buy Insignia branded tablet. Demon Yacht. I saw that. Yes. Yes, baby girl. Oh, and by the way, you wouldn't believe it, from the earlier squabble between this one and Ralph, they will actually make room for each other at the food bowl, so it's not like they don't get along. They just felt like squabbling. I can't wait till the garbage truck comes tomorrow. I've got to clean out my garbage can in here, and the can for out on the curb is full. And I mean full. Anyway, like I said, most of what I just did for the Tarrasque is repeated for every joint. Oh! Don't you even think about it, Fuzzball. No. No. What do you think you're doing? What do you think you're doing, huh? Figures. Doesn't it? We start talking about Shinju, and Ralph shows up. Don't you? And yes, he's purring. Oh, you little crazy furball. Crazy, crazy, crazy. Nope, you're not getting down there. You're getting down on the floor. Because you were squabbling earlier. You started the fight, I saw it. Mm-hmm. Down you go. Shoot. That's right spelling, Carlton. Mark. I stream at 480p because I've got an old garbage computer that if I try to stream it anything more, it goes. As for Carlton, he's in the living room. He's actually been spending time on Mom's chair. My mom, a couple weeks ago, she stopped being able to stand. And what's happening is her legs have just gotten weaker and weaker. So her doctor said, okay, come into the hospital, you stay for 3 days, and then we move you to a short-term care facility with physical therapy, and by staying in the hospital 3 days, Medicare covers it. Well, she's been gone a couple weeks. Carlton's been on the back of her chair. A few weeks before that, well, Carlton and Ralph kind of shift who's going to be jumping on the lap. And it'll change every few months or so. It'll cycle out. In a couple months, you'll see Carlton coming in here every night, and Ralph is nowhere to be seen. No. No. As for what I'm using, well, it's a, like I said, this is a 9 or 10-year-old machine. Okay, so let me pull up my because I don't always remember all my stuff. Okay, the processor, okay, is an Intel Core i5-2320. It has 16 gig of RAM and a GTX 960 video card. No. But yeah, Carlton's missing Mom, so he's been sleeping on her chair. And Ralph is trying to sneak back in here. And yes, I use single monitor. If I use multiple monitor, it'd be so much easier to keep track of oops, I'm not on screen. But I don't have the desk space or current cache for an extra monitor. But I mean, listen to that. You can hear the fan because this is such an old machine. Now, you can hear the fan easily because I've got the side off the machine. Yeah. Anyway. Okay, it's almost 9:30. I'm kind of yawning and stuff. We have planned that I'm going to finish the Tarrasque, and then once I've done that, I'm gonna go dive into... No! I told you no! Go on down. Anyway, dive into Blender and try to make a rust monster or something like that. Ralph. So, while this is going on, I'm also, dealing with the Kickstarter for the Giants and working on an increasingly larger and larger orc set. My original plan was 10 of each. 10 heads, 10 torsos, 10 left arm, 10 right arms, 10 legs. Now it's up to 46 heads, 30 torsos, probably at least 20 legs and each arm, plus optional pauldrons you can place on the shoulders and 4 or 5 shields that can fit on the left arm if you want it. I'm considering just placing them straight onto Gumroad. I'm not sure how much to charge for them. Go figure. But yeah, Gumroad, by the way, is the storefront that Duncan Luca uses. It's also used for a lot of things like ZBrush brushes, those seam brushes that I got from, for ZBrush that I use a lot now. I got from a store on Gumroad. But yeah, if I keep up at the current rate of stuff for the orcs, it's going to be somewhere on the order of 3.2 billion orcs or more. Yeah. And that's not even counting the fact that you can do this. That looked like a really weird dance. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and call it a night for right now. Now you. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and call it a night right now. Like I said, I didn't get much sleep and I didn't get my nap. This is just straight up the masked hordes, is what I'm going to call it. And I'm going to call it a night. I'm going to do my usual hand flippy countdown thingy after refreshing the page. And then I'm going to do the countdown when I get to one finger, say something goofy, and make it go. And yeah. So, that's going to be 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The first rule of the Dunning-Kruger effect is, you don't know you're suffering from the Dunning-Kruger effect. Look it up.